You're sitting at a family dinner, everyone is laughing, the food is warm, and on the surface everything looks fine. But then someone, a parent, an aunt, a cousin, says something about your sibling, a small compliment, a passing comparison, and something moves inside you. Not rage, not exactly, something quieter and older than that. A tightening, a familiar ache you thought you'd outgrown. You're an adult, you have your own life, your own choices, your own hard-won sense of who you are. And yet, in that moment, something from childhood is suddenly right there at the table with you. This is one of the most quietly painful experiences in adult life, and one of the least talked about. Adult sibling conflict doesn't always look like shouting or estrangement. Sometimes it looks like a careful politeness, a subject no one raises, a relationship that functions on the surface but carries something unresolved underneath, year after year. So why does this happen? Why do wounds between siblings survive so long? And what does psychology actually tell us about the patterns that begin in childhood and refuse to leave? To understand this, we have to go back to the beginning. Not to blame anyone, but to see clearly. Alfred Adler, the Austrian psychologist whose work on inferiority, belonging, and birth order remains quietly revolutionary, understood something that many people still overlook. He recognized that the family is not simply a place of warmth and safety. It is also the first arena in which a child learns where they stand. Who is seen, who is praised, who is trusted with responsibility, who is protected, and who, perhaps, is quietly passed over. In that arena, siblings are not just companions. They are, in a very real psychological sense, rivals for something that feels essential to survival: the love, attention, and approval of the people who hold the child's world together. This is not a flaw in human nature. It is a natural response to a real situation. A young child cannot yet think in abstract terms about fairness or abundance. What they feel is immediate and visceral. Is there enough for me? Am I enough? Do I matter here? When a child repeatedly receives the message, through comparison, through favoritism, through being overlooked, that the answer to those questions is uncertain, something takes root. Adler called it the inferiority feeling. Not a diagnosis, not a permanent condition, but a wound to the sense of one's own worth and place. And wounds that form early, in the most intimate relationships we know, tend to be the ones that last. Now here is where it becomes important to understand something about how the mind works. Carl Jung spoke of the way early emotional experiences become what he called complexes, clusters of feeling and memory that operate below the level of conscious thought. They are not simply memories we can choose to set aside. They are living patterns, activated by the right trigger, pulling us back into an emotional state that belongs to a much younger version of ourselves. This is why a grown adult, someone with a career, a family, a full and complicated life, can feel, in the presence of a sibling, suddenly small again. Not because they are weak, not because they haven't grown, but because the trigger is precise. The sibling's face, their voice, the particular dynamic between you. These are the exact conditions under which the original wound was formed. The nervous system recognizes the pattern before the conscious mind has time to intervene. And so the rivalry continues, not always loudly, often in the most subtle ways. In the need to prove something, in the quiet satisfaction when a sibling struggles, in the sting that arrives when they succeed, in the way certain conversations always seem to circle back to the same unspoken competition. Erich Fromm, writing about the human need for belonging and the fear of isolation, helps us understand another layer of this. He observed that human beings have a deep, almost desperate need to feel connected, to feel that they are part of something, that they are not alone. The family is the first place that need is either met or frustrated. When siblings grow up in an environment where love feels conditional, where approval is scarce, where comparison is the language of the household, they learn to see each other not as allies in the same struggle, but as obstacles to what they need most. That perception, formed in childhood, does not automatically dissolve when the children become adults. It goes underground. It becomes the invisible architecture of the relationship. Consider what this looks like in practice. Two siblings who were constantly compared as children may, as adults, find themselves unable to genuinely celebrate each other's achievements. There is always a shadow, always a quiet calculation. Not because either of them is a bad person, but because the pattern was laid down before they had the language or the awareness to question it. Or consider the sibling who was the family's identified problem, the one who was labelled difficult, sensitive, or too much, while another was held up as the capable one, the responsible one, the one who made the parents proud. Decades later, those roles may still be operating. The family may still relate to each sibling through the lens of those early labels, and the siblings themselves may still be unconsciously performing them or exhausting themselves trying to escape them. Favorite child effects, as psychologists sometimes call them, leave marks on both sides. The favored child may carry guilt or a fragile sense of worth that depends on always being seen as special. The less favored child may carry a wound that expresses itself as chronic self-doubt or as a fierce, sometimes exhausting drive to prove their value. Neither position is comfortable. Both are forms of distortion. And then there is estrangement, the sibling relationship that simply stops. Sometimes it ends in a dramatic rupture. More often it fades quietly through distance and avoidance until two people who grew up in the same house become strangers who exchange polite messages at Christmas. Sibling estrangement is more common than most people realize, and it is almost always more painful than it looks from the outside. Because even when the relationship has become genuinely harmful, there is grief in its absence. The loss of what it could have been. The loss of the person who shared your earliest world. So what do we do with all of this? The first thing, and perhaps the most important, is to stop treating these feelings as evidence of personal failure. The ache you feel around a sibling, the old competitiveness, the resentment that surfaces at family gatherings, these are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that something happened to you, in a context where you had very little power and very little understanding of what was taking place. Adler's deeper insight was not simply that inferiority wounds us. It was that the antidote to inferiority is not superiority. It is contribution. It is the quiet, steady act of living according to your own values, of building something that is genuinely yours, of relating to others, including difficult siblings, from a place of self-respect rather than from a place of need or fear. This does not mean you have to repair every broken sibling relationship. Some relationships, honestly assessed, are not safe or healthy to maintain. Protecting your peace is not the same as giving up on love. It is a form of love for yourself and for the truth of what a relationship actually is, rather than what you wish it could be. But for many people, the path forward is not estrangement. It is understanding. It is the slow, sometimes uncomfortable work of seeing the pattern clearly, in yourself, not just in your sibling, and choosing, consciously, how you want to respond to it now. Not as the child who needed to win, but as the adult who no longer needs the competition to tell them who they are. The wound that began in childhood does not have to define the relationship you carry into the rest of your life. Understanding it is the beginning of something different. If this video gave you something to think about, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of family, belonging, and the patterns that shape us, Inside the Labyrinth has more waiting for you. And if this spoke to a part of you that rarely gets heard, stay with that feeling for a moment. You are not broken because you feel deeply. You are only beginning to understand yourself. Subscribe to Inside the Labyrinth for more reflections on the hidden patterns of the human mind.